Welcome back to our last session. Before we begin, I'd like to reflect on what has been a remarkably well-aligned and forward-looking conversation. Takeaway, if we want equitable, meaningful access to emerging therapies, we must align now on diagnosis, eligibility, evidence, and policy. To get there, we need continued funding, including federal research support. To conclude our session today and speak on federal research priorities and funding infrastructure that will support the development of coverage-ready celiac disease therapeutics, I'd like to introduce Dr. Catherine Argue. Dr. Catherine Argue currently serves as the program manager for the peer-reviewed medical research program within the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs, U.S. Army Medical Research and Developmental Command. As the program manager for the PRMRP, Dr. Argue is responsible for the execution of the program lifecycle, including the annual investment strategy, development of program announcements, application review, funding of awards, oversight of in-progress research, and analysis of accomplishments. Throughout her time as a science officer, she provided scientific management and support across several PRMRP portfolios, including internal medicine, neuroscience and mental health, and rare diseases and conditions. Dr. Argue is the recipient of 2 Army Meritorious Civilian Service Medals. Thank you, Dr. Argue, and we appreciate you being here, and I'll let you begin our last session.
All right. Thank you so much, Dawn, for the kind introduction. We can go ahead and move right to the next slide. This is just our standard disclaimer, so we can move on ahead. All right, so I want to start by thanking the organizers for giving me the opportunity to speak to the celiac disease community here today. This is a really timely invitation since it coincides with us having open funding opportunities for celiac disease research. So I am going to spend the bulk of our time here today talking about those open funding opportunities, how applications are reviewed, and what makes applications successful. But I'll also fit in here, as you can see, a little bit of an overview just about the programs for those who are not already familiar. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So as Dawn stated in the introduction, the peer-reviewed medical research program is housed within the congressionally directed medical research programs. So I'm going to start out by sharing a few things that are shared in common across all of the CDMRP programs before we get into the specifics of the peer-reviewed medical research program, which houses the topic area of celiac disease. So this is just our star graphic, which very quickly summarizes everything, the most important bits about CDMRP. And the important message that I want to leave you all here with today is one, if you take a look at our mission statement, we are all about the delivery of healthcare solutions. CDMRP is not about funding research for research sake. We do fund across the entire pipeline of research, all the way from very early discovery up through and including large-scale clinical trials, but everything should be geared towards that eventual development of a healthcare solution. The other thing I want to point out is that we were started in 1992 by a group of breast cancer advocates that lobbied on the Hill for targeted funds for breast cancer research from Congress. And they asked that with that appropriation, the patient advocates, be given a seat at the funding table. And so that is one of the hallmarks and very important and central to who CDMRP is that not only do we want to develop the healthcare solutions, but we want to develop the ones that the patients are asking for, the one that is going to improve their quality of life and best fit their needs. Next slide, please. So we do all of this through a hallmarked two-tier review process. And I always like to share this slide because it's important to note a few things that are different about our review process compared to some other federal funding agencies. And the most important thing to keep in mind is that our peer review process is not a comparison-based process. We asked our peer review panels to think about an idealized application in their mind, and they're evaluating the applications that they are asked to review against those idealized applications. So applicants do receive a summary statement as well as a score, but the score that they receive is an absolute scientific merit score and is not reflective of their standing relative to the other applications. The entire comparison process happens during the second tier, which is programmatic review. The other important thing to keep in mind about our review process is that we involve consumers or patient advocates, those that stand to directly benefit from the research that we are funding at both stages of the peer review process. So patient advocates are full voting members with equal weight to that of the scientists and clinicians during both peer and programmatic review. Next slide, please. This is showing a list of the full 34 programs that received appropriations under CDMRP for 2026. So feel free to check this out. There might be some other programs of interest that align to your research area. I am going to focus all of our remaining time here today on the peer-reviewed medical research program. Next slide, please. This slide is showing the full list of 52 topic areas that were included in the congressional language for PRMRP for 2026. And we don't need to spend too much time on this slide. We organize the topic areas into these portfolios to group together ones with commonalities in the physiological system research area, and really to group together conditions where there's similarities and needs of the patients. And so you'll find celiac disease housed within the autoimmune disorders and immunology portfolio. Next slide, please. Where the portfolios are most important to applicants is that we set the program priorities at the portfolio level. There's no pre-allocation of funding to a portfolio or a topic area, so there's no competitive advantage by choosing one or aligning to one versus another. But what is important is that at the portfolio level, that is where the program office is telling the applicants what types of research we would like to see, and it follows along the continuum of care. So what foundational studies are needed for these topic areas, epidemiological studies, prevention strategies, diagnosis, and treatment. Under each of those categories of the continuum of care, we have specific goals that we would like to see addressed. And so applicants are required to select one topic area and one strategic goal that they will be addressing with their research. Next slide, please. This is just giving a little bit of an example of what the strategic goals look like. This is just a kind of generalized summary. I think it's fairly self-explanatory, hopefully, where you can find different types of things, but just a few points to highlight. One is that think about the immediate end goal of the research that you are posing. If it is successful, which of these gaps will it fulfill in the short term? Of course, everything long-term might be headed towards a therapy or an intervention, but you want to think about the immediate outcome in terms of which strategic goal you are selecting that you will be addressing. I also want to point out that prevention is very broadly defined. It's not just prevention of the entire disease or condition itself, but also prevention of comorbidity. And similarly to diagnostics, it's not just the initial diagnosis, it's also disease tracking, prognostic predictions, as well as assessing response to treatment. And then when we get to treatments, these can be a lot of different things. Pharmacological interventions is the first thing that comes to mind, but we also have a lot of opportunities and fund quite a bit of research on strategies to tailor interventions that are already existing, repurposing drugs, as well as some kind of alternative or applied health therapies, such as lifestyle interventions, exercise or dietary recommendations, those types of things. Next slide, please. So you can find our funding opportunities in a variety of different locations. The CDMRP website, the eBRAP website also houses all of them, and then they're also found on grants.gov. If you're interested in all of the CDMRP funding opportunities, you can pull them up on grants.gov using our CFDA number, which is 12.420. If you're only specifically interested in the peer-reviewed medical research program funding opportunities, you can find them by typing in the program's initialism, PRMRP, and then you'll find just the ones from this program. Next slide, please. So these are the 7 funding opportunities that we have for FY26. And as I said, these are currently open and they span the entire pipeline of research from very initial early discovery. You see there, that's Discovery Award, does not allow for preliminary data. That's for new lines of inquiry. We are not just looking for innovation in terms of using the latest and greatest methodology. We are really looking for out of the box thinking, something that is going to be paradigm changing for the disease or condition. So that's the Discovery Award. When you move into something that's already kind of an established line of inquiry and you need to complete the logical next steps, you need to do some validation and expansion studies. We have the Research Advancement Award. And then once you start thinking about true solution development, so the initial stages of getting a lead candidate in hand or a prototype in hand, that's where we start moving into the translational research stage. So we have the Impact Award, and that kind of bridges your gap from basic research, where maybe you need to iron out a few more details with the mechanism or the pathway before you can get to that lead compound. That is what that Impact Award is for. It's anticipated that the end stage of the Impact Award is that you have some starting stage of a potential product in development. And it will be further refined with additional funding, but it should be those starting stages in hand. Whenever we talk about product or solution under this program, it's very broadly defined as either a tangible product, such as a drug or device, but it also includes those intangible knowledge products, such as clinical decision-making tools and clinical guidance. Moving on, we have the Technology Therapeutic Development Award. It kind of picks up right where the Impact Award left off, and it requires that you demonstrate in the preliminary data that you have a prototype or the initial stages of a product in hand that you will advance towards clinical testing under this award. And it's really designed to be for those final steps of clinical translation. So we anticipate that you would, if it is a pharmacological agent, be conducting the IND or IDE enabling studies in order to get approval from the FDA to start a first in human clinical trial. It is anticipated that the immediate next steps upon the successful completion of a Technology Therapeutic Development Award would be a clinical trial application. So then we have our clinical trial mechanisms. There are 2 there. Everything that I have mentioned prior to getting into the things that have a little bit of green in their boxes, it allows for clinical research, but they do not allow for interventional clinical trials. If you have an intervention that you will be assessing, you have to apply under one of the award mechanisms under this kind of clinical trial box where we're on in the right-hand side of your screen. And also importantly, once you get to these clinical trial award mechanisms, the clinical trial award and the lifestyle and applied health, that is where you must be working in a human subjects population of some sort and can no longer be conducting animal studies. So the clinical trial award is very straightforward for clinical trials that are interventional in nature. So it cannot fund clinical research. However, there are some kind of gray areas a lot of times with clinical trials versus clinical research. So we do have this Lifestyle and Applied Health Research Award, and that is really designed to do clinical research and also clinical trials that would not be regulated by the FDA or equivalent regulatory agency if you're outside of the United States. And the Lifestyle and Applied Health Research Award is really focused on improving patient outcomes and quality of life. So finding how treatment paradigms can be tailored to best improve quality of life and looking at some of those regulated interventions such as exercise, dietary, even a vitamin supplement, something like that might fit into that award mechanism. Down at the bottom of these seven mechanisms, we are offering a brand new award mechanism for this year, which is the Platform Clinical Translation Award. This one has a similar starting point to the Technology Therapeutic Development Award. You must have the starting stages of a product in hand. However, how this is unique, it is that it is for broadly applicable platform products. So they must be applicable to two PRMRP topic areas. And we think about these as, immune system modulating diseases that might be able to impact a wide variety of autoimmune or immunological disorders. Sorry, it's very late on a Friday afternoon, so forgive me with losing my speaking capabilities here. But we also have things such as gene therapies that might be useful for a lot of different diseases or conditions, multiplex diagnostics, all of those things that, you're providing a backbone of a platform, and then it will be ultimately tested for a variety of different conditions. That award mechanism can fund all the way up through and including phase 0 or phase 1 clinical trials for that initial safety data. And so that is one of the rare cases where we do allow a partnership between animal research for your final stages of preclinical development and then also way moving into the clinical trials. However, your research proposal does not need to span that entire spectrum. You can come in anywhere within that kind of pipeline that we have set out. So at a minimum, you have to have the starting stages of the platform product in hand, and the maximum endpoint is the end of your phase 1 clinical trial. Next slide, please. This is just a quick summary slide, and also very important, has the cost limits on here for all of these award mechanisms. Everything that we have this year is a total cost limit. That is inclusive of both your direct and indirect costs. I want to point out that all of our funding opportunities require some type of pre-application. If it is a letter of intent, which you can see 5 out of the 7 here are letters of intent, there is no screening. The letter of intent is just for program planning purposes, and you will not receive an invitation. You can, at any time after submitting the letter of intent, move forward with submitting the full application. The Platform Clinical Translation Award and the Clinical Trial Award, those require a little bit more extensive pre-applications in the form of pre-proposals. They will be screened by our programmatic panel, and you will be invited, if the idea is of interest, by the programmatic panel to submit a full application. Next slide, please. So now we get into the tips part. How to have a competitive PRMRP application. And the single most important tip is to read the announcement really carefully. It sounds kind of silly, but a lot of other funding agencies do one-on-one consultation with applicants, and we do not do that. So we provide a wealth of information in our funding opportunities to help provide all of the information that we would like to give if we were able to consult with individuals on that, on their specific project. So make sure you read through all of the details, because in doing so, you're really going to make sure that you understand the intent, all of the pieces that we are asking for, and very importantly, how your application will be assessed. I want to point out that the peer review criteria for each of our funding opportunities is very distinct and meant to reflect the maturity stage of the science. So there's a much, kind of lower bar for feasibility and things like that when you're at those very basic research stages, as opposed to when you're proposing testing something in a clinical trial setting. So make sure you take a very careful look at the peer review criteria. Not only are they different criteria, but they have different weighting in terms of their relative importance. So we have criteria such as impact versus research strategy and feasibility, and even innovation versus your end stage, kind of what you plan to do post award. And those are going to be weighted differently depending on what stage of the pipeline you are and how close to getting a regulatory approved drug. The other tip I want to give here is about that post-award transition part. So when you get to those more mature stages of research, what really stands out and makes a competitive application isn't always what they're immediately proposing to do, but demonstrating that you are the team, that you have made the connections that is going to make your successful outcomes of that research go somewhere, that it's not just going to fall flat and end with you. We recognize that, not all researchers do all things. So if you're not going to be the one to take it to those next steps, you want to show that you're making the networking, the connections, that you're going to get the information disseminated to individuals that will help to advance the study so that it can reach its true impact potential. Next slide, please. So these are just the last kind of reminders for strategies of success, relevance. That is where reading the funding opportunity comes into play, is to make sure that you are aligning your work with the specific guidance within that announcement. We are looking for solutions. Even at the basic research stage, we want to know how it will inform eventual solutions. So speak to impact. Innovation is maturation stage dependent. So pay close attention to the ones that are asking for something really true, novel, paradigm shifting versus those where you just want to make sure you're using, modern techniques and those types of things. And then also feasibility, that's also research stage maturity dependent, but make sure that you're looking for what the application is telling you to show in terms of preliminary data, your analysis plan, availability to the resources you need, all of those types of things. Next slide, please. And lastly, timelines. We're very strict with deadlines. We never offer an extension on an individual basis. Please do not be the person that starts your application the day it is due to find you need to go through a whole lot of password changes to get into the system, or that uploads are taking very long and then, there's a power outage, whatever might happen that causes you to miss that deadline. We absolutely cannot give extensions on an individual basis. And then grantsmanship, keep in mind that there's going to be consumers on the panel, patient advocates, so individuals with an out clinical or research background. There's specific attachments that ask you to write in lay language. So we always recommend that you pay very close attention to those because the consumer vote is an important one. Next slide, please. And very lastly, if you're not already, please make sure that you sign up for email alerts. You can do this at the CDMRP website or the eBRAP website to make sure that you can receive notice when we have new funding opportunities available. And I think that's my last content slide. If there's time, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that very comprehensive overview of research funding opportunities and keys to success for application. Hopefully that will help some of our participants in their future application process to make it run a little bit smoother and hopefully lead to some funding. We don't have any questions, and the honor of it being late Friday and us all being tired, I'd like to wrap up if that's okay. I want to thank everyone for their participation today, including all our presenters, sponsors, and our Zoom coordinators. And a special thank you to Vanessa Weisbrod, who really helps plan this event and spent many hours in the background with us getting this ready. The event was recorded and it will be available on the CDF and the SSCD websites for future reference. So please feel free to share this with anyone who you think might benefit from all or any part of these conversations. You'll be able to access them. I just want to have a closing statement. We are moving from a condition managed solely by diet towards a therapeutic era, but I think the theme of today was that therapies alone will not change outcomes, and so we also need to work on access and coverage. And we've learned from other disease communities in our final session that success depends upon early coordination across clinicians, researchers, advocacy groups, industry, and payers. So with that, I encourage us all to continue to work together towards our goals. Please reach out to us at SSCD on the professional science side or CDF on the patient advocacy side if you'd like to be any more involved with this cause or have any ideas. And we thank everyone. Have a good weekend.